Okay, welcome back. We talked about in our previous class, talked about the universal selector and how you can affect different HTML elements using the universal selector. So, if peradventure, let me just recap on what the universal selector is before I move on to ID and class. And let's say now we no longer want to affect the p paragraph, we want to affect the list. So we want to affect this list here, and we also want to affect the other list elements down the HTML document, this one here. I'm talking about this list element, and once I'm affecting the parent, be rest assured that the child content is also going to be affected, and this one also. So what we're going to do, we're going to apply universal selector to this list. So I'll say UL. Don't worry much about the particular style I'm going to apply to this page, but we're going to explain them in subsequent classes. So I'm going to say list style none. And what in list style none does, it takes away the bullet number or the numbering before any list in our HTML document. And I'll go back to my browser and I'll refresh, and you can see since our p paragraph no longer has any styling, it's back to our default, using our default fonts. And now you could see the list elements, I have no bullets beside it. Okay, let me go back, take that off and remove that particular styling so you see the difference. Save. And this was what we have before. You can notice the bullets beside our list and also the bullets beside our list. So if I go back, tab, no, Ctrl Z and save, preview our HTML back, we have our bullets and out of both lists. That's how to use the universal selector. So basically the universal selector affects every HTML element, no matter where it's located in the HTML file. So when applying universal selector, it affects that specific HTML element across the HTML document. So now I want to talk about the ID and the class. I'm going to delete this, and now we're just going to add some little styling, because I'm going to style in our document as we go. Go tab, and we'll just take out the body for now. Or let's just give the font size of pretty standard font size of 16 pixels. So okay, that's enough. Okay, basically the ID, you can see if we go down our HTML document, one of the easiest ways to apply style to your HTML document is through an ID. To reference a particular HTML element, a specific HTML element is through an ID. And ID means identity. And in a nutshell, when we're talking about identity, two elements or two people can have the same identity. That means their identity are actually separate. You can expect my thumbprint and your thumbprint to be exactly the same. So if you take that from the normal day experience and apply that to your HTML, that means an element that has an ID of home, it should be the only element in that particular HTML document or HTML markup that has the ID of home. So what I'm saying is that by standards, not if you apply it will work. If you apply ID to two elements, it will work. But by standard, it's going to show you an error. Okay, let's oh, I think I need to chill a little bit. Okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to show you in practical so you see what I'm talking about. Here we have an ID of wrap. ID is used to reference only one HTML element. If peradventure I come here and give this an ID of ID equals wrap, save, refresh, and I'm going to view page source, you see my HTML validator is going to tell me I have an error, and it says ID already defined. And if you come to the left, see an ID is a unique identifier. Each time this attribute is used on in the HTML, it must have a different value. If you are using this attribute as a hook for a style sheet, it may be more appropriate to use classes. Okay, that brings us to our next one. We'll talk about that in the next class. Let's talk about an ID now. So I just did that to show you that that's going to generate an HTML error. If I take this out, delete, save, you see we use it here to the wrap from here, added it here, generated an error. We'll take it back to an HTML document, refresh, go back to validator and refresh that one too. Oh, that's wrong. Say Ctrl U. I can see no error. That's the way it's supposed to be. So how do you reference an ID in your CSS using that selector? Once you applied an ID in the HTML markup is an attribute. So the attribute of ID, and it has a value of wrap. So basically you want to be intelligent when giving your ID names like wrap or value. So these values are self-created. So they don't fall out of the sky. You create them out of thin air. So basically you want to apply IDs that are meaningful to their function, not to the HTML structure. I think I should recap that. I made a little tiny bit of mistake in the explanation. The ID should be, the name of the ID should have a meaning to your structure, not to the appearance. Like now, if I'm like here, we use main head. We don't want to use something like, let's say, color main head, because in the long run, something like color main head, because in the long run this is going to give us problem, because we may end up having other styles apart from the color. Let's say color main head, and when we reference it in our CSS, we added font size, we added positioning to that particular style, declaration, and it's going to be a problem because the name says color main head. Meanwhile, the thing it does is more than just color the header, and that's a problem. So you should be very intelligent when naming your div. The best thing to do is name them in regards to structure. So I'm going to Ctrl Z here, take us back to where we are, delete that out. So you should name them according to structure. So we're using the idea of wrap, and when referencing an ID or using an ID selector, it's usually preceded by the pound sign. That's Shift 3 on your keyboard. Press Shift on your keyboard and 3 on your keyboard, you get to the pound sign. Then the name of the ID. The name of the ID is the name you gave to that particular ID attribute, which is main head. I'll copy this. Okay, let's use the wrap. Copy this and Ctrl V, and now we have the wrap. So now we've made a selection of this particular div. So what are we selecting in HTML? Basically in HTML we are selecting this particular div till, okay, that's wrapper div. So, and this is where the wrapper div ended. So we're selecting virtually all the content of our sites, and that's what the ID does. Select a particular HTML element that has that ID. So I'll press down, tab. Okay, now we're going to apply some simple star rules to this page. So I want to give the width of 950 pixels. If I save, I go back to my web page and I refresh. You may not notice the change yet. You may not notice the change, so I'll just give it a background color so you see the change. Pound signs. No, say color. The color is a property, and now we're about to give it the value, and we'll give it the value of, let's give it hash. We just took an arbitrary value in order for us to continue the explanation. Oops, I meant to apply background color. And I'll save, go back to my web page, preview, and now you can see the section of our div. Our div starts here and closes here, and it has a fixed width of 900 pixels. So basically, ID is a more specific selector when selecting elements on your HTML document. And after I talked about class, talk about the combination selector, which is a more powerful way of selecting HTML element on your HTML document, because it makes use of a combination of all the selectors that we're going to talk about throughout this course. And we just want to position this page at the middle margin 0 auto, and save, preview, and now we can see our web page is positioned at the middle of the page. So we could apply ID to other HTML elements. To be more specific on the ID, you could also use the, pardon me, I'm not going to talk about that now. I think we're going to talk about it later in the class. So I'll copy this, I'll create another ID, declaration, Ctrl V, open this, close brace, press the tab key, tab down a little bit, tab also to the side, tab. So basically you want to arrange your style like this so it becomes easy to read, and the more easy your HTML is to read, better for you. So basically what I'm doing now, I use the idea of main header. I'm selecting the div called main header from here, starting here and ends here. So now you begin to see the use of comments in our HTML document. So I'm selecting, so I just want to say, let's just bump up the font size a little bit, so we see the effect. Font size, let's try something a little bit outrageous, let's say 40 pixels, and we'll save, and let's give the color background color. I keep making that mistake, background color. And the reason I give the background color, so you see the section that is actually the div that we just selected. And I'm going to try something different. 6, 9, E9, E5, E5. Save. I don't know what color is that. I'll take something arbitrary. And okay. You see the color is just a little off on gray, and you see how it affected the page. See, the font looks a little bit bigger, our header is a little bit bigger, and the content below it is actually separated by that color background. So that's how to apply an identity ID. So go over to our CSS and we bump this down. We see that we see margin auto 0 auto. Okay, this was the CSS we applied to the page, and you can see how broken down it is to the left of our style. Now we're going to go to main header, because we'll apply the style to main header. I'll click on that, and voila, you see we have our background which we applied and our font size. So that's how to use an ID selector in HTML.